Thank you so much for having me. My name is Michelle Smith, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor, serving folks in different states right now. I'm in New Hampshire, Florida, Oklahoma, and Oregon. I do virtual work with folks, whether it's individual, couples work, group work, and the primary focus of my practice is to be able to help people rewire negative belief systems, patterns that they feel very stuck in, perhaps that talk therapy has not gotten them the results that they're really hoping to get. Specifically, a lot of the times with trauma or complicated grief or challenges around that, those are the folks that are working with myself in my practice. I think that, working with the subconscious mind is so important because we have 90% of our brain, right? That's like this already automatic stuff that we just do. We just are this way and we're like, why do I respond this way? Or I always get mad at my partner this way, or I don't like that I do this and why is that? Some of my clients come to me and say, they've been in therapy, but they feel like they know everything, but they still haven't changed that dynamic, or they still feel like I talk a lot about the volcano erupting. Feels like sometimes it just erupts and you feel like you have no way of changing that. That is a big part of what I'm doing with my clients is I'm helping them identify, okay, first off, where do those patterns come from? What do we need to do to be able to rewire that and change the narrative, change the belief systems, but also change the way you're showing up? And perhaps it's using some of these modalities that we need to target that 90% of the brain, if that makes sense.
Automatic means it's so fast and it's energy effective. It's cost efficient. Like it's just easier to shoot first, ask questions later.
Yes, yes. A lot of my clients are very self-aware, and so they know these patterns, but then they get frustrated when why are they still resurfacing? I've been talking about this. I feel like I've been talking about this for years, but I still, when that people, places, and things line up and it feels so similar to those past experiences, it feels like I'm not in control. And nobody likes to feel that way. Nobody wants to feel like they can't be in control of those responses, especially if they have a lot of emotional attachment or past experiences tied. That's where I come in, where, I'm trying to help them understand, okay, what type of modalities will help? I do a lot of EMDR, clinical hypnosis, things that help people understand deeper attachment wounds, some of those things, IFS, somatic work. Depending on what the client's there for, I'll utilize those different approaches to help them meet their treatment needs, essentially.
How do we know that therapy is not working? How do we define that? Is it a timeline? Like I feel like we go and, fix me, fix my kids, fix my marriage, whatever that is, fix them. How do we know that we have done the things?
As we know, healing is not linear. It's not like, oh, I screwed up and now not making any progress. We have to really change our relationship with what does healing look like? How does that feel? It's this roller coaster many times, right? When clients who are getting frustrated, who feel like they have not made the progress, a lot of the times they're saying, I'm coming to therapy week after week. I feel like I'm saying the same story in different tone. And my therapist is saying kind of the same things, maybe perhaps validating me or giving, coping strategies, like you said, perhaps they're helpful, but I still feel like there's this deeper theme or belief system or response that I feel like I just cannot get away from. A lot of the times that's a sign. If you feel like you're meeting with your therapist, you're talking about your treatment goals, you still feel stuck with getting to a point where you feel confident working through those episodes, whether it's a high emotional intensity episode or a complex cycle with your partner or something along that sort. If you still feel very stuck, a lot of the times that's where I'll say, okay, well, what type of therapy modalities were you utilizing? Have you been scanned or assessed for trauma? Trauma is something that's missed a lot in the mental health field because it looks a lot like other mental health. So it can shapeshift and it can look like depression. It can look like ADHD. It can look like anxiety, depending on who you are, how you're presenting. And if we're not assessing for that, sometimes that is missed. That's a part of the intake process with my clients is I'll ask them, have you done a trauma assessment? Let's check. Let's just make sure if that may be a component. And then we can go from there, making the treatment plan based on if that is present.
Everybody's different and everybody will receive and resonate with different things. Why do we, so that bridge between I am aware and I can see my cycle. I am unable to stop myself re-engaging in that cycle, or that cycle takes many ways, but it's somehow keeps repeating itself. and history just like keeps going and going. Like, why do we know better, but we don't do better?
A lot of the times when you're talking about clients like that, sometimes they're labeled as like intellectualizers or they're very in their head and they've created this safety in their head that if I can make sense of what's happening, if I can have a story around or have a narrative or understand why or get the right book or the right research or the right whatever it is, then I feel like I can heal. And this creates this disconnect from the mind and the body. So that is a big part of this is reconnecting. The mind and the body are very much together. And so we have to help those folks reconnect. Perhaps your nervous system is truly out of sorts because are you taking care of yourself, right? Are you sending messages of safety to your body day to day? And that might be like, are you getting up and going in the bathroom when you have to go? Or are you holding it in because I need to get through one more session? I'm guilty of it too. But then we have to think about the deeper subconscious meaning behind that. Am I telling my body I'm not safe enough to take care of my physical needs? And if I can't take care of my physical needs, definitely don't give her the emotional needs. She's not ready for that, right? It's really understanding that. And the relationship that the client has with their nervous system is a big part of that stabilization process in any type of therapy or coaching. That's what you're starting with, is giving them those tools to rebuild stabilization.
Work with very niche, very specific type of things. We explore how does your day to day look like? How do you manage stress? How do you schedule time for play and fun? Do you schedule time to do nothing? Those practical things that are outside of sex, but have everything to do with it, right? Creating a context. I don't know if there's a point where I'm completely healed.
Yeah.
Because, every so often you're like, you know what? I kind of, I joke that I'm the type of crazy that can see my crazy, and then sometimes I'm married to a therapist and I'm a nerd, so like I will like I do these things, and then I give it like this clinical perspective on this attachments or whatever, and this may be connected to whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think, at least for me, I don't think there's a time where we're like, oh, I have completely healed everything. I say sometimes it's about really adjusting the volumes of those voices and learning when to listen to them and learning when to say, I hear you, but I'm an adult now and I can depend on myself and give myself what I need.
Yes.
And I can trust that I can handle this today.
It is a lifelong process, right? I always tell my clients if you're still breathing, you have the privilege of keep growing. It's always a constant opportunity to keep being curious, to keep building awareness, to keep growing and fine tuning that work that you're doing. There's not an end goal. Sometimes when you put that perfectionism on it, your relationship with healing can really be messed up, right? That's a big part of this too, is we have such an achievement-based society where okay, you do good, you get a promotion. You do good, you get a party. Well, there's no party for healing your trauma. And maybe we should have those parties. Maybe we should think about reframing ideas of success. Sometimes success means, you know what, I had a really hard day, but I worked through it differently today. And that's helpful too.
To define healing from trauma.
There's different stages. A lot of the times I talk a lot about this in my groups that I do. I do what I call seeking safety groups, which are 8-week groups talking about trauma. And I talk about the different stages. The first stage is reestablishing that safety. That's understanding the nervous system, reconnecting to your body, reestablishing safety because you are so disconnected from trauma. I have to get out of survival mode first. And when I do that, when I have those tools, when I'm kind of exploring, okay, how do I take care of myself, all of these things, when I'm building that awareness, I'm able to step into, and let me clarify too, a lot of this is back and forth. I always talk to clients, you're going to go back to needing to restabilize, and that's normal. But when I've gotten that, a lot of the times I can start getting to the next stage where I'm processing the grief around trauma. There's this mourning process that goes on. I have to grieve what sacrifices I made, perhaps to myself, my sense of self, my life, my stabilization. There's this mourning process that has to happen. And that may be done through IFS work or some of this inner child work that perhaps you do and things like that. So there's this grief as a secondary stage. And then the third stage is reconnection, not just reconnection with me, it's reconnection with parts of me that maybe in the past I've said have no value because of my trauma or are not helpful. It's also reconnecting with the world and others around us because the survival has really disconnected us from being able to trust Can I be vulnerable? Can I be in a relationship? Am I lovable enough? Whatever that is, reconnecting with yourself, with the world around you, rechanging those thinking processes. And like I said, you really ebb and flow. Something may rip the rug out from under you and you may have to go back to stabilization. That does not mean that you're not still making progress.
We have a joke here because nobody throws a party, right? And you don't throw yourself a party either. I have always been a messy person since I was in one room. That was a mess, and then the apartment, that was a mess. Now we own a home with a yard and whatever. That is a mess.
Yeah.
But I do so much work today than I used to back in the apartment or the room. It's just life just getting bigger and bigger. So even though you progress, you reach that next level. I achieved my dream 15 years ago, 20 years ago was I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have a degree and I wanted to own a home. Done. Now I have all the problems of having that dream because you dream about the dream, right? Oh, what my life could look like then,
Yeah.
and then this always this back and forth. Oh, I could have, I should have, whatever in the past. And I identify with what you said, having to grieve all the other possibilities that are just not there anymore. Whether that was because of trauma or your own choices or whatever that is. Having to be okay, but this is what it is now.
Yeah.
And do I like it or not? Do I need to change something? And I feel like there's always this sense of dissatisfaction because it's never that idea in the future, that vacation that you're imagining is sometimes better than when you actually get there and you have to go to the uncomfortable, the passport check, or the kids screaming in the back of the car and
Yeah.
stopping at the gas station toilet. You don't see that in your dream. And then you go through that uncomfortable thing, and it's only afterwards that you can look back and say, oh, that was nice.
Yes, that's so true, right? If we have this idea that when I get there, everything's going to be magically so much easier, then we're not looking at reality from a radical acceptance lens, truly. I always talk about just happiness and sadness being two sides of the same coin, right? You have to feel that discomfort, that sadness, but you have to do that so you can also access pleasure and joy, Trauma disconnects us from pleasure, from joy, from feeling safe in ideas of success or even having a healthy viewpoint around what that will look like. That's another part where that subconscious rewiring can help is giving you actually a helpful lens around what success will feel like and what it can look like and that it will still be work, but it's how you think about and perceive that makes everything different.
Tuesday, I had a few of these calls and then I have sessions after. And I realized I spent all day saying, oh my goodness, I have all these people things to do. When you carry on the idea, and I just realized that as you were talking, when you carry on the idea, I'm tired and I have to do all the things. Obviously, it's not a thing that makes money. So there's not like a clear reward now after this is completed. And today, I think I have the same amount of people, but because I haven't even given attention to it, I feel just normal.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting though? The mindset is everything, right? It's the lens that we see things through, and that's your core beliefs. That's the way that you're perceiving. And sometimes those can be very deeply rooted and hard to change. And so I talk about taking the glasses off and putting on a perspective that's actually helpful because the way we view the lens in which we view is everything. And you can change that from have to do this to what a privilege that I get to sit with my clients, to hear these stories, to be able to do this work. And I get it. It's not for the weak of heart. Some days are harder than others.
It's just the added stuff of like that comes with owning a business. That is a lot. And like you said, sometimes there's not a clear achievement. I have worked very hard on doing the dishes or whatnot. Nobody's going to throw me a party. Yeah, sometimes there's a song. I did the dishes. I'm a hero. It's a kid's song. So sometimes they go to the kids, I'm the dishes, I'm a hero.
Love it.
But for other little things, we do a lot of labor that is not recognized, and we sometimes don't recognize in ourselves. We just hypercritical. Oh, I took care of myself for 5 days, but these 2 days I didn't, so I'm a piece of shit. Therapy's never gonna work for me. Like there are times where when you're feeling like crap, your mind is like, you know what else is crappy? and then replace everything copy that has happened in the past few years.
What you focus on, you see more of. Being intentional is also a big part of that stabilization process too, where it's like, okay, you want to set that intention today. I'm going to look for abundance. I'm going to look for those moments of connection. I'm going to look for those moments that bring me pleasure because I want to set that mode on. Otherwise, our brains are hardwired to look for the negative because of the survival techniques of our brain. Of course, that's kept us safe, but we're not living amongst bears or in primal ages. We don't have the same types of threats anymore, but our brain still thinks it is. It still thinks that discomfort itself is a threat or a bear chasing us. When we pause, when we notice that, we are able to change that. We are able to rewire that pattern and saying, it doesn't feel great. I don't love it, but I'm still safe. I'm still good.
In couples where often there's a piece missing when, especially when it comes to like teaching communication, there's a lot that is missing in what is your body language? What is your inner dialogue saying before you even come to the conversation? You can be sending so many signals of threat to your partner. And if you have been married for long enough, your partner is already, we already have our arguments to reply before you open your mouth. Because then we have all the fights are about everything else that has happened, and we just keep stuck in those loops. So I ask my people, okay, can you notice how your body's reacting when you're having that inner monologue about going blah 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 because you want this and whatever? Believe me, I'm right.
Yeah.
This is how it happened.
Yes.
You come to the conversation, you haven't opened your mouth, you already have a story of what's going on, whether you realize it or not, and your body is sending messages of that story.
Yes.
And the other person is receiving those messages again, whether they're aware of it or not. And having that neuroception of here it comes. How do you describe the subconscious mind states and what is some practical ways that couples and people in relationships, what can they start to notice and actually helping to create change in those patterns?
That's a great question. And I think it aligns a lot with the emotionally focused couples therapy, where a lot of the times I'll use this to map out those clients' conflict cycles. And a client who is able to identify, okay, here's my triggers, here's what happens, here's the story I start to tell about myself, my partner. How does that tie back to these negative core beliefs that I've already identified, perhaps in my individual therapy? And then what behavioral response do I have? Defensiveness? Do I withdraw? Do I do this? Do I, start, like you said, that body language changing? And then that starts to trigger almost this infinity sign. And so a lot of the times what I'll do is I'll map that out with clients and I'll help them figure out ways to kind of throw a wrench in that conflict cycle because that is a volcano erupting, right? That's one of those, boom, from 0 to 100, they're there. And then how do you corrupt that? How do you change it? How do you say, I notice we're in our cycle. Let's take a break. Or, hey, sometimes I'll just say, just do this, do the infinity sign. And that means y'all need a pause, or how can we notice that, right? Because you want to fight with your partner in a way that you care about them, that you love them. The way that you show up to those fights, a lot of the times is how it ends, like you're saying. So we have to take accountability for our side of the street. And a lot of the times that's what I'll do with my couples is help them understand that and the deeper subconscious connection.
Do you feel like we ever rewire reaction, or do we just learn to pause and do something else instead?
I think you can rewire your reaction, but that's that secondary part of some of the deeper subconscious works. What has to come first is the pause and the awareness and the intentionality. If we don't have stabilization, we can't do these deeper processes, perhaps with EMDR or with clinical hypnosis, where I'm actually helping you feed in new pathways. It's like water. So the water already kind of has this flow. It's automatically going to flow. I'm going to help you carve out a little other stream over here. It's going to take a while for that to start naturally, organically flowing this way. But as we unlearn patterns, as we process old memories, as we build up new belief systems, we can kind of guide it to be more this way. Now, it doesn't mean that sometimes your body might say, wait, remember this path? This path was easy. Let's go this way. And then we have to go back to stabilization and use our skills and what have you. Does not mean that you failed, but I do think that it's possible to be able to switch that trajectory.
My instant reaction at times is, well, then I'll leave. I'm done. And that worked when it was piano class, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not feeling it anymore." And it doesn't work as well when you're married and have kids and a whole life together. The biggest work I have been doing lately is my relationship is that you have these automatic assumptions because this is what you might mean. And, a few days after I told my husband, and he's like, that was not what was going through my head.
Yeah.
So the other night, he's like watching I kind of hate that we're using devices in the bed because I'm trying to cut off. And it's like, I know that it's unfair to ask, well, I am cutting it off, so you shouldn't do it either. So he's watching The Office. I'm playing a game on his phone. And so the message that sends is, which I think in a way is truthful and like, you are not giving presents, so you don't want to be with me.
Yes.
And so I was cuddling up to him, and then I moved to the other way. I already heard my thoughts going like, "Oh, he doesn't care about you. He doesn't want to spend time with you." All that story that goes on with that. And so he goes, "Why are you moving away?" In my head, he's not even registering that I'm here. How quick it flips when people actually hear our partner's thought. And sometimes it will be so much easier than going by our own story.
Yes. And that's a good thing to teach those couples is how can you interrupt that, right? I'm noticing that you're on your phone right now. The way that I'm perceiving this is that you don't want to cuddle up with me right now. That could easily interrupt where he could say, "Oh no, I didn't realize what you were trying to do is an emotional bid." And a lot of the times emotional bids are misunderstood or forgotten, not necessarily intentionally, but just because we are so many different places, being a parent, being a partner, being all these things, it's helpful to be able to say, what does this mean, right? Because this is the way I'm taking it. And then you can have a conversation instead of withdraw that self-protection that, oh, it doesn't feel good to be vulnerable anymore. So boop, walls are up, right?
Cold shoulder.
Yeah, cold shoulder. Yeah, I don't want you anyways, so no problem.
That's part of what's so funny when you do this work and then you're labeling I reduce my attachment needs when I feel like you are the someone. And he's like, "Oh, that's so insightful." I'm like, yeah, it's very hard to live here.
Exactly. You can't separate it. You can't. I mean, you have this lens of awareness that you look at yourself through too. And it could be a blessing and a curse because you can't put the blinders back on, essentially.
Is this something that you experience in your daily life? I feel like there is an inner me who is wiser. She usually comes out at night. That's her best time to do her work. And at times this may be more than a year ago now. We have worked really hard in not giving the silent treatment. But we understand this. So we have spent not just living together 12 years, but we have spent most of our free time together too. Even long hours and we text, maybe not as much anymore, especially because the work that we do doesn't allow for that. But we're pretty aware of each other's mind maps. We can say it to each other, we're not saying it to anybody. And that has helped us understand the history, but that doesn't change how it feels today. One time we were doing the whole like just not talk, but we were doing chores around the house and whatnot. I feel like there's two tracks. There's this track that is doing the stonewalling and whatnot, and there's this other track that's saying, "You're just being ridiculous right now." Well, what is that? What are you doing? What a waste of time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think that subconscious rewiring can be so helpful because you can know all of that. You can even respond differently. But if your belief system is still rooted in whatever it is, they're going to leave me. I'm the problem. I'm not good enough. Then it's very hard you're using only that 10% of the brain. And so this is why sometimes clients say, "I tried affirmations and it didn't help me. It feels like I'm lying to myself." Well, that's because it's so against you're literally trying to say something that's totally against what you believe and had reinforced through experience after experience after experience. Of course, that doesn't feel authentic. Modality is like EMDR, clinical hypnosis. It bridges this gap between logic and emotion. I'm able to utilize, for example, bilateral stimulation to be able to look at the logic and the emotion at the same time and come to different conclusions where it's like, well, actually, that wasn't fair for me to go through that. Actually, that's not a helpful way to think of it. And actually, maybe I am good enough. And then that feels true. And then when I'm operating from that perspective, everything changes. So I always talk to clients about when you know it's working, you recognize, wow, I'm responding differently in these circumstances. This feels different. This fight feels very similar, but I'm different. I'm showing up different. The way I'm thinking about it is different. The way I'm behaving is different. The way that I'm responding is different. That's when you know that belief systems are shifting. And that's awesome whenever I'm able to have that moment with a client to be like, yes, you did it. See, it's working.
It feels very nice. It's weird to see the transition. What comes to mind is when we started, I was 17 when we started. Any kind of difficulty, I would cry. It was a whole thing. And the transition from that to now, in the middle, it was like I was crying, but I was calm. I would have to say, this is just what my body does. I feel fine and I can continue. This is not me being flooded. Obviously, crying is great. I'm not saying the goal is where you do not cry. The now I'm able to have a difficult conversation without just crying. And I can voice out. It is hard for me right now to not get defensive.
Yes.
Being able to just recognize that time is just so fast. I have this advantage of, having deep dive into all of this. But if I didn't do the work I do and if he wasn't a therapist, I don't know if we will have learned any of it.
That's so true because a lot of family systems are not teaching these things growing up, or perhaps it's behind closed doors, or maybe you had a negative model of how to communicate. And then what do I do? How do I show up intentionally in my relationship? That feels very foreign. I'm just responding out of what I know and what feels safe. And what feels safe is not always helpful. You're really having to notice that. And it's a constant work. That's why the healing process is always growing, always evolving. You get a chance. You have to reframe that. You get a chance to keep doing better and to keep showing up and to learn more. It's not easy. You have to stay tuned in. And I think that's why a lot of people say, I don't know if I'm going to stick around with this. This is a lot of hard work.
It's her work. That is one of the first questions, especially when I work with couples. What makes it worth it? Why don't you just divorce? Well, there's a reason why. What's working right? Because we're so focused on how about we come here to tell you our problems. Okay, but what's actually working right? Because I'm guessing there's a reason
Yes.
for you to actually be here. I want to put forward the work together. And if you're not willing, then there's nothing much I can do. I can give you 20,000 ideas and you don't actually do any of them. There's no way I can help you. How do you start identifying your belief system and how do we build a new one if there's things in there that are not working for us anymore?
That's a great question. Belief systems may not even be something that you say in your head. You may never say to yourself, I'm not worthy. That just might not be a part of your, language or vocabulary or even a thought. But how I behave tells me my belief system. So if I feel like, for example, I'm always shrinking myself, or I always feel like if there's a conflict, I must be the one, there's something wrong with me. And I'm not sharing my needs with my partner because I have this core belief at the root that's saying your needs are not worthy. We have to consider the behavioral responses. We have to consider the ways that you show up. Are you showing up as if you are worthy? Because that means I'm taking care of myself. That means I'm looking at my time and energy as a way that it's valuable. That means I'm not stifling my communication. And if something hurts my feelings, I'm going to say something to my partner. But if I'm fearful of that, if I'm shrinking myself, then probably I do have a core belief around value or worthiness or inadequacy. So a lot of times I have a handout that I'll talk to clients about, and there's these different categories, and I'll have them go through it and I'll have them notice their body specifically. And I'll say, when your body responds, that's probably a belief system. So we'll jot that down and we'll start there. And then we can start building. Perhaps there's memories attached to that, right? Perhaps those are helpful to rewire with EMDR, or perhaps we need to build in some new subconscious suggestions with clinical hypnosis so I can use that and I can use that information to start helping you rewire. And that's where we start.
What's hypnosis look like in therapy? I'm curious because my image of hypnosis is it's very like magic. I feel for your smile, I feel like you know where I'm going. Is this like magic show
Yeah.
trick thing? But
Great question. Hypnosis gets a really bad rap because of what you've described. And I've been to those shows too, where it's like, it's very entertaining. These people are dropping to the floor and clucking like chickens. What is that? I don't want to do that in therapy. Absolutely. That makes total sense. Every type of therapy you're doing is some type of hypnosis because I'm giving you suggestions to change your mindset in therapy. I am helping you rewire your thinking in some capacity. At least I should be if I'm a good therapist, right? Hypnosis hypnosis is helping a client get to this what a trance-like state, which is not just done in hypnosis. If you're meditating, if you're doing mindfulness, if you're focused in on something, you're really engulfed in a book, you're engulfed in the same brain waves will happen also before sleep or within deep sleep. We have these brain waves that create a trance-like state. And in that state, you are more suggestible. Your brain is more open to perhaps positive suggestions or some of these new belief systems to start sinking in. So it's a client guided process. A lot of the times people feel like the therapist has the control when it's a hypnosis session. That's not true. You cannot get into trance like state unless you want to. And so a lot of it is the psychoeducation around it at first and helping me understand, okay, what type of language works for you? How does your brain work? What type of suggestions would work for you? When we talk about perhaps the intellectualizing client, they will need a lot of suggestions to turn off this conscious mind because the conscious mind wants to hold on, hold on, hold on. So I'm going to know that and I'm going to note that and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to I make scripts around that and I'm going to utilize what you're learning or what we're coming out of your EMDR and weave that in. Maybe there's a theme, right? I'm noticing this theme coming up, struggles with pleasure. Okay, let's do a hypnosis around that. And then I record it and send it to them so that they can keep listening and practicing and reinforcing that over time. It's a wonderful addition to the subconscious work that I do. It's really changed the way I practice all over because language is so important. What we say and what we don't say has so much impact. It's been such a wonderful opportunity to add that as a clinical modality to my treatment.
What are the type of suggestions you might give to a client?
It depends on their treatment plans. A lot of it's going to be dependent on what are those behavioral and thinking and belief responses that you're trying to change. I may walk you through perhaps a future progression. For example, visualize yourself in this energy of I'm worthy, walking through a day, really giving you that suggestion, seeing your future self there. Sometimes interweaving IFS work where we can connect to old parts, communicate to old parts that may be reinforcing new belief systems or new ways of thinking or operating or building some stabilization, some safety, right? Getting some grounding techniques, things like that. Really, it can be utilized for so many different things that it's very unique to kind of what the client's treatment needs are.
If people were to take only one thing from you today, what would you choose it to be?
That's a good question. It's possible to change your brain. Your brain is always regenerating. Neuroplasticity means that you get a new brain every couple of years. If you feel stuck, if you feel like I'm never going to be able to change that, you can. There's an ability to do that. Of course, it's not easy. It takes work, but it is doable. And if you're committed to the work, you can work it.
What is the balance for you between change and acceptance?
Ooh, good question. I think they go hand in hand. As I change, as I grow, I have to accept parts of myself that maybe in the past I did not like to look at. I have to understand the relationship with those things. They helped you in a way, and we're not going to push them away forever. They're going to find their right place now in your system. I think they go hand in hand because as I'm changing, as I'm evolving, I'm also changing my relationship with the things that I struggled to accept. I'm bringing them into the light. I'm bringing them out of the shadows.
Making friends with your shadow is difficult, but at the same time, it's still freeing. So recently, I had to take like a personality test kind of thing. And fairness was a top five, and love was a top five. Kindness was one of the last ones of like 30 traits or something. First, I was like, well, that's not shameful. But then I'm like, okay. So when I think about it, I don't remember what you were talking. Oh, you were talking about earlier about the beliefs and value we see in ourselves that we are worth something or we bring something to the table, right?
Yes.
One of the biggest places where I have had to recreate a relationship with that was work and professionalism. I have been a volunteer since I'm like 10 years old. I volunteered for a few years and then I have done it here and there. And now at the point where I am, have given a lot in many other ways. I'm always happy to send resources and things like that. But I was very free with my time and my presence.
Yeah.
It's being a lot of time and a lot of effort to recognize, yeah, If somebody's inviting me to teach a yoga class, it is okay for me to ask, okay, how much are you gonna pay me?
Right.
I always struggle with this. Like people are giving me an opportunity because I was starting or whatever. And even today, I still, in a way, struggle with that. I'm a weird person in the sense I have these feelings, but I'm also a little bit arrogant. Like, like I don't my shit.
Good for you. And that's showing up as if, right? That's a really good practice. I talk to my clients a lot about that. Okay, what would it look like if you truly 100% believe I'm valuable, my time is valuable? Of course, you'd be saying, here is my rate, right? My time is valuable. And if you want to book me, my rate is this. Would love to talk more about that. That's really you aligning with that new belief system and practicing to show up as if comfortable because then the narrative may start going of, well, they don't want you and you might not have any offers, whatever you're telling yourself. You have to push that away, stay in that energy of value. And it's difficult with this work. We're helpers. And so it can be hard to get the value that we know we deserve, but it's important because the work we do is so incredibly deep and intimate and valuable at the core.
Is there a difference for you between show up as if as you are embodying that and fake it till you make it?
I think it's kind of the same thing. I always use the language of borrow that perspective for a period of time because that may be easier for clients to gently play with it. You can put it back down. Fake it till you make it sometimes might feel ingenuine to folks. I think authenticity is a big part of healing too. And so it may just be, once again, that hypnosis language switch is I'm saying the same thing, but there's a switch in that where at least I'm able to say, okay, you could still show up authentically and practice something different.
I think sometimes, I have a very specific worldview, especially when it comes to like sex, right? So I see it everywhere. I understand that other people don't see it or live it like that. I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show You.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so love is my favorite character.
Yeah.
So your worldview, it really does inform the way that you perceive and scan the environment and do give meaning to things. I feel like a lot of this work, being able to put that out there, sometimes being able to have the person where you're like, this is the nasty thought I had. It doesn't mean I'm gonna act like it. It just means this is the automatic thing that my brain puts up.
Yes. Yes, because when you push it down, when you avoid it, it actually becomes this bigger monster. It becomes this scarier thing. How can I just acknowledge, okay, there's my thought. I don't have to respond. I have this discomfort. My automatic response is, I want to do this, but I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to sit with this. I'm just going to notice that. I'm going to be with it for a little bit. Maybe I'll distract myself afterwards, but I can sit with this thought without responding. And it shows you your own strength and the ability to be able to recognize those things and not push it down. That creates more somatic symptoms, sometimes physical illness, things like that can manifest from that. It's really helpful to be able to find ways and teach client strategies to work through that.
Is there something we haven't talked about today that you would like to mention?
I think so. This has been great. Yeah. I appreciate you allowing me to be a part of this. This is so cool.